With us here we have the Lauren Britton, the Transliteracy and Development Director at the FFL Free Library. She's going to talk about the FFL Fabulous Lab, and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. That was a great introduction. I am, again, Lauren Britton, the Transliteracy Development Director here at the FFL Free Library. And before we really dive in to the presentation, I really want to step back for a minute and talk about some big picture stuff to help frame our discussion. I want to review what public libraries do. So most public library missions read something like, we provide free and open access to information and ideas. And this information used to be transmitted mainly through books. However, today information and ideas are transmitted really across a wide range of platforms, and information comes in a variety of containers and formats. So we're no longer simply consumers of information. We are also creators of information. Information that can be uploaded and blogged, shared, liked, tweeted, pinned. The list just goes on. And our patrons create information every day, valuable information that is a part of our community narrative. And the question is, how do we incorporate this information into our services? And how do we help our patrons create as well as consume? And those are some of the issues that we are going to try and tackle over the course of this presentation. So a roadmap, if you will, of where this talk is going to go. We'll do some quick background on information about the Fayetteville Library. Then we'll move into why this project was able to move forward here, how it happened. I'll explain a little bit about what a makerspace is and why I think they belong in public libraries, how we did it, and then finally some tips and tricks on how you might be able to incorporate some of this stuff into your services as well. So some background information about the Fayetteville Free Library. We're located in Fayetteville, New York, which is a suburb of Syracuse, New York, and we're a member library of the Onondaga Public Library System. We are chartered to serve about 10,000 people, although in reality, and from circulation statistics and qualitative data that we've collected, we actually serve a much larger area. And the FFL is unique. It's an incredible place to work and is really the pride and joy of this community. We've been rated a 5-star library by Library Journal for 4 consecutive years, which is just really amazing. We have a unique hiring model here at the library that really sets us apart from a lot of other institutions, in that we have 10 full-time staff members, 7 of whom are librarians, and some part-time librarians. But all of our support staff members, our circulation clerks, etc., are MLIS students at Syracuse University, which is really great. It's great for them, and it's also great for us. And I'll get back to that at some point in the presentation. But so anyways, it's Fabulous Library and Fabulous Laboratory. So the lab developed, has been in the process of developing over the past year. We've been working to create this new fully integrated library service, a makerspace that we are calling the FFL Fab Lab, which is short for the Fabulous Laboratory. And it's really the first of its kind. There is another lab that's run by a company called Tech Venture that some of you may know about, that's at a library in Indiana. This truck is parked in the library's parking lot, but it's not actually part of the library service itself. It's still very cool, though. So some of you may be familiar with makerspaces and some of you may not, so we'll just do a little background here on what this concept is. Makerspaces developed out of DIY culture, which is do-it-yourself. And they're places where people come together to create and collaborate, to share resources and knowledge and stuff. And by that I mean tools and technology. And if you think about that definition, it sounds a little familiar, at least to me. Sharing resources and knowledge and stuff, which is sort of what a public library does. What do makerspaces do? Makerspaces provide, at a basic level, access to information and ideas that typically people have to pay for, whether it's through a membership to a hackerspace or a tech shop, which can, run upwards of $150 a month, sometimes more, sometimes less, or tuition to a university in order to use their lab that requires you to either be a student or faculty member. Makerspaces really give people the ability to make almost anything. And in the wise words of Neil Gershenfeld, who is the director for the Center of Bits and Atoms at MIT, he also wrote a fabulous book called Fab. I'm going to use that word a lot. I apologize in advance. That makerspaces really give people the ability to create local solutions to local problems. So I want to zoom out a little bit again, get a little big picture for a moment. And as Dr. Lankus, Dr. David Lankus, who's a professor at the iSchool at Syracuse University and also a mentor of mine, has said on many occasions, we are in the knowledge business. We are not in the book business. And new tools have come along that enable us to better serve our communities, that create exciting and innovative ways to engage with our patrons. And it's important to remember that we are a community resource and that these services really are a natural extension of things that we already do. For example, at the Fayetteville Free Library, we offer things called Tech Times, which are one-on-one appointments a patron can schedule with a librarian to get help with a specific technology question, such as how do I download an ebook to my Kindle, or how do I make a spreadsheet in Excel, or how do I use Skype? Really, any tech question that someone has, and every librarian here participates in these. And we also offer something called a Jack Rack appointment, which has a long acronym, but is in essence one-on-one job search assistance. And it's 90 minutes that someone can sit with a librarian to work on building a resume or building a cover letter, applying to jobs. And it helps to remove this barrier that can sometimes happen when everything is digital. And we also offer things like Skype author series. So these technology evolutions are really creating catalysts for more unique services that we can offer. And, oops, I am not in the right mode. There we go. This is a great quote from Dr. David Lankus, who I mentioned earlier, from his book, The Atlas of New Librarianship. And I like this quote because it reinforces this idea that, librarians are not curators of books. We are really leaders in our communities who are able to provide a number of resources for free and access to these services that people can't get anywhere else. And he says something really interesting here, which is that librarianship is about knowledge and facilitating knowledge creation, which is really this idea is at the foundation of the FFL's Fabulous Laboratory. So how do we facilitate knowledge creation? So if as librarians, we're agreeing that we're facilitators of knowledge creation and not just consumption, how do we do this? We not only need new tools, but perhaps we need a new mindset. And I will venture to say the mindset of a maker. Makers really have this unique worldview where any system, object, or problem can be tinkered with and improved upon. And it's a really empowering worldview, that if something's there, you can fix it or put your own spin on it to make it what you need. So to sort of recap, librarianship is about facilitating knowledge creation, and makerspaces are places where people come together to create and collaborate. So the why that I frequently get asked, why would a library include makerspaces in their services? And I would answer that because librarians, and therefore libraries, facilitate knowledge creation. In other words, the why. And makerspaces are a tool, or the how. So now that we've sort of built this framework, I want to really dive in and talk more specifically about the project that I started here at the Fayetteville Free Library. And it's certainly complicated enough to talk about these ideas in a very big picture way. And it's a totally different thing to implement them in many respects. This project developed out of a student proposal that I created for a course during my master's program at Syracuse University. And the course was called Innovation in Public Libraries. And throughout the semester, we were introduced to a number of really interesting ideas and concepts and people, which included 3D printing. And I will never forget walking into the Design Works lab at Syracuse University, which is their tech shop and fabrication lab, and seeing this incredible technology, laser cutters and CNC routers and 3D printers, and just imagining what could happen if everyone had access to these things, if everyone could make whatever they needed. And it just stuck with me. So as my final project for this course, I wrote a proposal, which I called 3D Printing, a Catalyst for Community Collaboration. And as many final graduate papers are, it was a very lengthy proposal, and I included goals and outcomes. There was a number of SWOT analyses, a budget, possible funding sources, descriptions of responsible parties. I even had a literature review, which was a challenge because as this has never been done before, there's nothing really that has been written about it. So I was pulling a lot of information from other industries, other sources, and sort of figuring out how this could work in a space, in a public setting like the library. While I was in graduate school, I also worked part-time for the Fayetteville Free Library as a clerk, part of that really unique hiring model that Sue Considine, the director here, has created. So I had a relationship with the library and Sue, the director, and I presented my idea to her while I was still in the program at Syracuse University, and she hired me to execute my idea after I graduated. And this really was not as easy as it sounds. I actually wrote 3 different proposals that I brought into that meeting to present to her, which varied in budget, time, staff, technology, pretty much very different proposals. And the reason that I did this was that I took a lot of time to examine the potential barriers to launching this idea. And I really analyzed what the assumptions might be, where the no's might come up, where the pitfalls were going to pop up. And I developed a really strategic process in order to ensure the greatest possibility for success. So clearly this actually took a long time. I had to build a lot of support from the ground up, connecting with community partners, other staff members and librarians, makers and experts in the community that could pitch in and help launch this idea in a way that's never been done before. Part of this whole story I think that I need to emphasize here, and important to note, that the FFL was the perfect location to launch a pilot project like this for a number of reasons. But the most important reason is the culture of innovation that already existed here. I met with very little resistance when I presented this idea, partly because of the amount of research in those 3 proposals that I had, but also because as an institution, the Fayetteville Free Library is very supportive of people who want to take risks, meaning that it's okay to fail here. And my boss, Sue Constantine, I mentioned earlier, has said many times to me that she isn't a manager, she is a facilitator. And I'm lucky in that, you know, if you go to her with a well-researched idea, she goes straight into the let's try it mode and helps to organize staff time, resources, budget, press, you know, anything you really need to make it happen and give you every opportunity for success. Before tackling a project like this, I think it's important that you understand your organization's level of willingness to take risks. Is it okay to fail? You know, are you empowered to have these big ideas and run with them? And if you're a library director, you know, how do you work with your staff? Do you facilitate opportunity, or do you see yourself as more of a manager? You know, we all have to challenge assumptions, our own assumptions, our colleagues' assumptions, our community's assumptions regarding what a librarian's job is, this what we're supposed to do. One of the most popular questions that I get asked whenever I'm talking about this project is, how are you funding it? And the answer is really incredibly simple. Number one, my first job as a newly hired librarian was grant writing. Love it, embrace it. It's not always fun. It's a lot of legwork. It takes a lot of time, but once you develop a strong narrative, it's easy to sort of cut and paste and move them to different proposals. And there are a number of grants out there right now geared towards putting technology into public education systems like a library. And you know, the trick is you just need to submit a lot of them. And once you write one, it's a lot easier to keep moving forward with them. So again, grant writing is very important. Second, donations. We have 2 MakerBot 3D printers, and I'll explain what those are in a moment, for example. Both were donated, one from a local computer store. And I presented them with this project. I just called and set up a meeting and asked if they would be willing to support this idea in some way. It ties in with, you know, their business, what they do. And they did. And I really learned a lesson here that you'd be surprised what will happen if you ask. And projects like these are a little bit different, and you can ask different people than you might normally about funding or support in some way, because it's non-traditional, it's new. And while I will talk about this more in a minute, I do want to point out that it's essential that you develop community partners, not only to help raise funds and purchase technology, but also to help run the programs, to teach classes. Remember, we're facilitating knowledge creation. We do not need to be digital fabrication experts, and I'll get more to that point in a little bit. And lastly, as far as the funding goes, embrace alternative methods of fundraising. This past October, I presented this project at the Contact Summit in New York City, and we won a $10,000 Innovation Award for it. And as part of that award, we also won a free campaign on Indiegogo.com, which is a crowdsourced funding site. And I would highly recommend you looking into this kind of fundraising if you're interested in a project like this. We ended up raising an additional $4,000 from this website. And the incredible thing is that we had donations from all over the world. it was just amazing to walk in the morning and see how many people had donated in Europe the night before. And all that we did was put this up on a website. So it's a really neat tool. Now, I want to take a moment to share a short 4-minute video clip with you that gives a great illustration of what 3D printing is, as well as what it can do for our communities. The sound might be a little bit hard to hear, but it doesn't really matter. The video itself is descriptive enough, and it's actually in another language, so you probably won't be missing much. But I'm going to go ahead and launch this now. And again, it's just a quick 4-minute piece.
Glass cup design. Yeah. Down them. Share. Upload. Save to this. No, I'm not the picture. I the pictures. Share. Transport a date. Analyze. Share. Transfer data. You.
Okay, so thanks for bearing with me through that. And if you have further questions on 3D printing, I know that's sort of a silly video. I can certainly point you to some more resources. But the 3D printer that we have is called a MakerBot, MakerBot Thingiverse to be precise. And I need to say that MakerBot Industries is one of the coolest companies out there, and I would not normally plug a vendor or a product like this, but they're just incredible supporters of libraries and educators and getting this technology into the hands of the public. Bree Pettis, who's the guy who founded MakerBot and invented the machine, actually used to be a teacher, and it shows. So MakerBot Industries is one of the first companies to make affordable 3D printers. And here at the library we have two Thingimatics, one that was purchased in August and one that was purchased in November through the donations that we talked about earlier. And when I say affordable, commercial printing, 3D printing has been around for many, many years, but these machines were upwards of $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a piece. And the cost of a MakerBot Thingimatic is under $2,000. It is less expensive even if you buy it unassembled and build it yourself. However, I will warn you that it comes looking like IKEA. However, they do have better customer service, so I'll let you make that choice. It's smaller than you think. It really fits comfortably on a desktop. It's not much larger than a regular ink and paper printer. And they use ABS plastic to print, which you can see a roll of the plastic in this photo right here. And this nuclear green is very popular with kids when they're trying to make green lantern rings. And I started to mention this in the previous slide, but a quick recap of prices for MakerBots and plastic. A roll will last for a pretty long time of that plastic we were just talking about. We've had the same roll on one of our MakerBots since January, and we've had 3 public events, a number of staff training opportunities, and we still have more than half of the roll left. And they aren't making MakerBot Thingomatics, the 2 printers that we have, anymore going forward. I think they're just selling down their stock right now. They just released, I think in January, a new printer, which is called the Replicator, that costs $1,749. And it's really cool. It's at the top of my wish list for this project. It can have 2 colors of plastic printing at the same time, so you can do some really incredible things with it. And the roll of plastic costs around $50, and we're currently developing a pricing strategy for it that is similar to the way we do paper printing. For example, here at the Fayetteville Library, the first 5 pages you print are free, and then it's 10 cents a page after that. And with 3D printing, we're developing a structure that's by minutes. So for example, your first 10 minutes to print would be absolutely free. And then after that, it would take maybe 10 cents, maybe 20 cents, we're still working out the details, a minute, just to help offset the cost of the plastic. And this is because the longer something takes to print, the more plastic it usually uses. But it's still keeping a free opportunity, because if you print smaller things, it's absolutely free for that first 10 minutes. And most things that you print would take less time than that. A really cool website that I would highly recommend if you're interested in pursuing something like this is called Thingiverse.com, and it is the universe of things. And what's incredibly cool about this site is that they have anything that you can imagine there, and it's an open sourced free access site. So you can go and say, I broke a part of my blender, and type in some information, and the likelihood is that someone else has also broken that same piece and created their own version of a replacement. You download the file and you transfer it over into the software that talks to the MakerBot, hit print, and out it comes. They have a ton of other cool things like whistles and that green lantern ring I was telling you about earlier, but there's plenty of practical applications and uses as well as the just fun, exciting stuff. And you know, I think it's again important for me to say that this is a great resource. You don't have to be able to design a 3D object on Google SketchUp in order to use this technology, and neither do your patrons. It's certainly cool to offer, you know, those kind of classes and to learn more about it yourself, but it is not necessary. It is not a barrier to access to not have that knowledge. You can simply download something from this site and print it. So I encourage you to explore that on your own. And I think it's important to note that while our makerspace certainly started with 3D printing at its foundation, that it has really grown to incorporate all avenues of maker culture. And the technology is certainly important, but it really isn't the focus. Our focus is now on giving our patrons the tools they need to create, to really foster a read-write culture in our community. And I'll just throw in a quick Wikipedia definition for that. It's kind of an odd term. But a read-write culture encourages people to add, change, influence, and interact with their culture. So people are consuming information, and then they're using that information to produce or create something new. So for example, a project that we're launching here at the Fayetteville Library is a Make Your Own Book project, where with a digital camera, a color printer, a glue stick, and some paper, you can help a child make their very first learn to read book. And they take pictures of their favorite words. You print the photo out, glue them into a paper book, and instead of then telling a child, you must learn to read these words first, cat and dog and ball, they have this kind of really cool opportunity to learn to read their favorite words first. And then what makes it even more exciting is you can circulate these books and start to build your own library of children's books that is written by the children in your community. Now, we are in the process of developing some other programming opportunities for our community, which includes bringing in local experts to teach a range of classes like Intro to Digital Fabrication, which I mentioned earlier, or Intro to Computer Programming, camps for girls and to keep them interested in technology, and all sorts of cool things are coming down the pipeline. And once again, I do want to mention our community is full of experts, and so is yours. We have technology teachers, artists, computer programmers, lawyers, both active and retired. The list just goes on of the resources you have in your communities. All of these people have knowledge that is worth sharing, and as librarians, we are creating the opportunity, we're facilitating the space for them to share it. I often get people looking at me like I'm crazy because they think this is science fiction, it couldn't really happen, it can't work, and it does work. It sounds like science fiction, but it's real. And you have people who know how to use this stuff already in your communities. You would be surprised what happens when you just put a child in front of this machine and some digital design software, and they can make things. You have a community full of experts, and it just takes some reaching out, some grassroots connections to start to develop that support. And makerspaces give our patrons the opportunity to create. They could, for example, make a feature-length film. And as librarians, we certainly don't need to become experts in movie making. What we do is what we've always done, which is provide access, space, and facilitate the opportunity for them to have the tools to do this. And another thing that I think is really important to point out is that a library makerspace will look different in every library. Libraries are really a reflection of their communities, and every community is different. So what the Fayetteville Library space looks like may not be what yours might look like. Maybe you have different technology. So just something to think about. I love this quote from Neil Gershenfeld, who I mentioned earlier in the presentation, because I really think he hits the nail on the head, that we need to expand our definition of what literacy is, not shrink it. Information and ideas are expressed in a variety of platforms, and they're transmitted in a variety of containers. And I don't think you would find a librarian anywhere who would say that one of their most important functions is supporting literacy. So just food for thought. And then if you're interested in doing something like this in your library, you really don't need much. You don't have to have thousands of dollars lying around to buy some $50,000 printer. You don't need to have an empty wing in your library to build out and renovate a space. What you do need is to think a little bit differently, to talk with your community and make some strategic choices about what technology you might add, how you might think of fundraising in a different way. And then as far as programming ideas, you could have an open house once a month in your community room, where you just put out access to things. We had one 2 weeks ago, and it was on a Saturday afternoon. We had the MakerBots out. We also had duct tape art that a 12-year-old library patron facilitated for us, hardware, jewelry, bookmaking, all sorts of things. And it doesn't cost a lot to put some of that stuff together and out there. It's more about creating the experience. So you could do something like that once a month. We offer a BristleBot workshop, which is a pretty cool thing. It's a small robot that kids can make out of a toothbrush head, a pager motor, and small batteries like a watch battery. And you get some double-sided tape and stick all that stuff together, and it ends up vibrating and moving. And it's a great way to introduce some of these ideas to young kids in your community and get them engaged and involved. And then one thing that takes almost no money to do that we're starting to launch this March are called Take Apart Thursdays. And I learned about this through Crash Space LA, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we asked our community to donate and bring in broken electronics, whether it was a toaster, a computer, a cell phone, anything that was cluttering up their garage or their basement that they didn't want back, that was broken. And we are going to set up times for people just to come in and take them apart. And it starts to facilitate this idea of how do things work? What can I do to change this? Do I know a better way to do it? And it's just a place to come and tinker, and it's free. You bring some tools and off you go. We have some tools here, and it's received a lot of success so far. We've had a number of donations, I think just because people are clearly excited to get rid of some of this stuff from their houses. And I would recommend that if you're searching for more inspiration, to look at hackerspaces, makerspaces, tech shops in your area around the web, such as CrashSpace, LA, or NYC Resistor. Most of these institutions and organizations are membership-based. You have to pay a fee or be invited to join them. But they, for the most part, all have really phenomenal websites that list great ideas like these Take Apart Thursdays. And some of them even offer open house craft nights that you can come in and meet other people and talk about different ideas that you have and do some cool things. So just as another resource that you might be able to pull inspiration from. And then finally what I want to say is that it's important to know there are no rules, that there are no requirements to doing this in your library. There's no set list of materials that you need. We're doing something that's never been done before, and it's a new service, and it's really exciting. And the key points are really to work with your community, to find your experts, and not to be afraid of some of this really incredible transformational technology and opportunity that's being created. So just some list of my references, including that fun video we showed earlier. And then really that's about it, and I'm open to taking questions, and there's my email address. If you have any questions, I'm happy to help in any way that I can. If you have questions about how to do this on your own, and my Twitter handle. So that's it.
Oh, Lauren, thank you. That was so wonderful, and I know we talked to you several months ago on Uncompass Live, and it looks like it has progressed since then. So yes. It was wonderful for us to get that update. So we do have questions coming in from the sounds of it, fast and furious.
Yeah, we really do.
So
here we go. First question: where are your makerspaces in your fabulous library?
Well, I'm glad you actually asked that question. I forgot to put this in the presentation. We're currently raising money through grant writing and some of those other things that I mentioned earlier to renovate an empty space in our library. So right now, our makerspace and our fabulous laboratory is on wheels. I have the MakerBots on carts, some other technology, and we can take this anywhere. Some days it'll be down in the community room, some days it's in our cafe, and it's also mobile to take out to schools and other libraries.
I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. Did you use a focus group to help design the makerspace concept?
We did not. I really I developed this proposal and moved forward, but once my boss brought me on to do this, we started reaching out to various community members. For example, one of our patrons is a professor at the SU DesignWorks lab I mentioned earlier, and he helped me put together the MakerBot, and through that process we also talked about other things he might like to see in there, and then he brought in some of his friends who are also into tinkering, and so in a roundabout way, I guess it was kind of like a focus group, but it's more this organic grassroots interest and volunteering that's happened from people who are just really excited to see something like this happen in their community.
But you did work a lot on having community support. I think, stressed that.
Yes. It's essential.
Okay, someone would like to know the name of the website for fundraising again?
Oh, sure. It's Indiegogo.com, INDIE gogo.com. And if you use this site, I do want you to know we were able to use it through for free. If you just go on and create a campaign, which I still think is a wonderful thing to do, they do take a cut. It is a third-party site, so they would take a cut of whatever fundraising that you did, but it can be really worth it.
Would that be similar to something like the Kickstarter website? Is that kind of equivalent?
Absolutely. It's almost the same thing. There's less restrictions on Indiegogo. I don't know much about Kickstarter, but I'm pretty sure that you can't, if you're a charity or something like that, with 501c3, which most public libraries are, there becomes this sort of weird gray area, and there was none of that with Indiegogo. But I haven't researched Kickstarter in a long time, so maybe that's changed.
Okay.
Okay. I have another question. Someone's interested in knowing what kind of applications or what kind of items you've used MakerBot for.
Oh, okay. Well, lots of exciting things. We had a party the other day where kids were printing out various rings, whether it was the Green Lantern rings or Lord of the Ring rings, so silly things like that. A lot of kids got into making cookie cutters.
Ooh,
which was pretty cool to see them designing and then printing these things. Yeah. And starting soon, we're going to have, similar to our tech times that I mentioned earlier, times that you can check out a librarian with the MakerBot until we have a permanent home built, so that you can come use this at a variety of different times, and then print out whatever you want. So the kids are really focused on the toys and robots and things like that, but the adults have made some pretty cool things too.
Okay, another question. How are you evaluating the success of the program?
Well, we're taking a lot of qualitative data, honestly, counting the number of people, which I have mixed views on, that are coming into some of these programs. And we launched our first open house in January, and we had over 200 people in the room at one point. It was mind-blowing. And then we launched another program, we continued the same series, and we had another open house this month, and we had almost exactly the same number of people come through, and I'm getting bombarded every day, and I'm happy about it. It's exciting. Emails from community members who want to volunteer, and my list just keeps growing of people who want to be involved. So we're in early stages yet, but it's proving to be really successful. And these people aren't just saying they want to volunteer, they're actually coming in and doing stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question. What digital design software are you using in the Fab Lab? Is it open source?
Sure. I'm a big supporter of open source. Google SketchUp is a great option. Blender is also free. It's kind of complicated and not really intuitive, so it's great if you have time to just explore, and there's a lot of online tutorials on YouTube that you can do for these things. 3dtin.com is also another free platform that you can use. And then once you design something, or if you just download it from Thingiverse, MakerBot has an open source software program which is called Replicator G. That is the thing that talks to the MakerBot, and it communicates that design and runs the G code that's generated and the real technical aspects. So you just hit build on that, and out it comes.
Okay. Have Fab Lab 3D printing patrons created, not copied, something significant, or is the Fab Lab's more important output and increased interest in science and engineering leading to future creation?
Oh, that's a good question. At this point, I mean, again, we are in early stages, so I'm not sure if I am understanding the question correctly, of significance that anyone has printed other than getting exposed to this technology. And I think, I recently saw a presentation that Ned Potter, the wiki man, who many of you might know, he's a librarian in England, I believe, did, where he said something like the top 10 jobs today didn't exist 10 years ago. And like social media consultants and all sorts of really exciting things. And this space offers not only kids but adults the opportunity to interact and develop skills you know, that they didn't know they would need, that weren't around when they were in school, and really helps to level the playing field. So it certainly is about the STEM subjects, which I recently read an article that some institutions were changing it to STEAM, being science, technology, engineering, art, and math, because art is certainly an important element in a lot of this. So I think it's both.
Good. Okay. Let me see if I've got one more here for you. Oh, did you get your MakerBot pre-assembled?
We had one, the first one we got, we purchased, well, it was donated, not assembled. And I was very pleased to have Tim Brower, who's a professor at Syracuse University, who spent a number of hours, I won't divulge how many, helping me assemble this. And I have to say I would do it all over again, because I learned so much. If that thing breaks, I know exactly how to fix it. And then the second one we ordered fully assembled, which was out of the box, ready to go. So they're both is the answer to the question, and both valuable in different ways.
All right, great. Lauren, thank you very much. That was wonderful. As I said, it was great for us to get the update, and I'm sure a lot of new people heard about that project. And my folks are back in your general direction. The next time I'm up there, I'm stopping in for a visit.
Excellent. We'd be happy to have you.
I keep asking for a MakerBot for Christmas, and it's still not happening. So I don't know.
Oh, keep trying.
One day. So, all right. Again, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and mute you. That ends our third presentation